Now, just in case you missed it earlier in the show, I want to play you what Victorian Premier Dan Andrews said today, again, in response to the Novak Djokovic visa case. Now, bear in mind, the chairman, more than any other politician in the country, and it was on his turf, of course, was adamant about not allowing any unvaccinated player to compete in the Australian Open next week. Well, on his return from a very comfortable 24-day holiday, can you imagine if Scott Morrison took 24 days off? Dan was almost fence-sitting.
I think that Rafa and a few others have made the position very, very clear. This tournament is much bigger than any one person. The nature of quite extraordinary powers that are held by the Immigration Minister is that I'm not going to be out there every day calling for him to use them or not use them. That's a matter for him.
That's a matter for him. It's no reason to smirk either. It was a Victorian Health Department panel which handed Djokovic an exemption to play. As he called for an investigation into that, he should. Meanwhile, Australia's Nick Kyrgios, isolating due to a COVID infection, must have become rather bored as he weighed in again to the Djokovic drama.
We know that the media like to create storms. Everything going on with Novak, I feel quite embarrassed as an Australian athlete that's seen what this guy has done, for us and, for the sport. I just don't think it's right how we're handling it.
The media has created the storm? Come on. Let's hear what the state opposition's community safety spokesman has to say about all of that. David Southwick, Happy New Year to you, sir.
Happy New Year to you, Chris. And what a bad way to start it for Victoria and Australia. It's an absolute disgrace. It really is.
It is a national embarrassment. And don't think that you can extract or separate the Victorian Health Department from all of this. They are in it right up to their chin.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, for the Premier, we've had the longest lockdowns in the world. This Premier's had the longest holiday in the world. He comes back with that smirk on his face and lying to the fact that he is responsible for this. It's his tournament. It's a Victorian tournament, one of our major and most important international events, the Australian Open. He's made an absolute mess of it. He's damaged our reputation. And what this does to our reputation on the world stage will take years to fix. And for a state that has always held the reputation as being the world's most livable city, being able to hold these events, what does that do for future events like the Grand Prix and others, Chris? This is real damage control for a Premier that needs to take responsibility and not pass the buck.
And it's one thing, this is so typical of Dan Andrews and so typical of the Andrews government, where they make big statements about, seeking this particular platform or making sure that this doesn't happen. But they're hopeless on crossing T's and dotting I's. They never follow through with anything, which is why hotel quarantine fell on its backside as badly as it did. And here he was, setting down the ground rules for how the Tennis Australia organisation should accept and not accept certain tennis officials, and he didn't make an inquiry as to how that would play out.
Correct. It's his tournament. It's his responsibility. Novak wasn't coming to Victoria to go shopping. He was coming here to play tennis in his tournament. So all the other issues about the visa and everything was all dependent on the exemption that his body that he created actually gave Novak. And so for Andrews only a few months earlier to say that we won't be having unvaccinated tennis players playing alongside those people in the crowd that are vaccinated and workers, jeopardising and threatening those, is all a bunch of lies. We had James Bellino, the Deputy Premier, only a few weeks ago and said, we're not going to have medical exemptions being used as loopholes. Well, you know what? This government, the Victorian government, needs to take some responsibility for their actions and the mess that they have created. It's not good enough for Daniel Andrews to pass the buck. This is an international tournament. This is our reputation, our future. And to have the contradictions of Victorians that have had the longest and worst lockdowns, restrictions now, businesses that are being smashed, and this Premier gives one set of rules and one set of conditions for one lot and another set for everyone else.
Which is why we couldn't find anyone at Fed Square today who would support the fact that Djokovic be allowed into the country and play the Australian Open. I know where the mob stands on this, and it's not on the side of what's occurred. Should we have an inquiry into how this played out? Should there be an inquiry into why the Deputy or the Acting Premier says one thing and his own health department is granting exemptions on the other hand?
You know what? We've had so much secrecy from this government and contradictions, confusion all the way through this pandemic. This is just another one to notch up in the belt in terms of a royal commission that ultimately needs to take place into the way that we manage the state. We're in a health crisis. Our ambulances have been on code red, which means last night, twice in a week, you have not been able to get an ambulance if you've needed one. We're in a mess. We're in an absolute mess. And I'm really keen to return Victoria back to the most livable city that it once was. That will never happen under this government. Secrecy, side deals, confusion, and one set of rules for tennis players and another set of harsh, tough conditions for every other Victorian. And no wonder Victorians are absolutely angry and furious with what has gone on with this particular issue.
And just a short reply, 24 days on holiday. Could you just imagine what would happen if Morrison did that?
I can't. Again, it beggars belief. It beggars belief. It really does. The guy should be showing some leadership.
Of course he should. It's not as if there hasn't been headline news and dramas to deal with. David Southwick, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Chris.